Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Katerina or Kat if you're new here, and today I'm going to be sharing my all-time favorite books with you, at least as of 2024. Now, I have read a lot of books in my 29 years. Now granted, I haven't been reading all 29 years, but at least in the last 15 to 17 years of when my reading has really taken off and finding my love of reading and finding my obsession with books, I have read well over 700 books. And it was very, very difficult for me to narrow down the list of my all-time favorite books because there are so many books to me that are memorable, so many books that created who I am as a reader today. I'm hoping that with this top 10 favorites that you guys get a little bit of insight of who I am as a reader. Here are all the books that we're going to be talking about. So let's just get into this video. Coming in at spot number 10, I don't think is going to be a big surprise to many of you, as I have talked about it many times in my past videos, and that is The Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. As I've said in my past series, Jennifer Lynn Barnes has instantly become an auto-buy author for me. I love everything that this author writes. I don't know what it is about her writing. It's addictive, it's fast-paced, it keeps me enraptured for hours on end, and I honestly could pick up any book that she releases and read it in one sitting. I love her characters. I love how you think that you know what's going on in the plot and the mystery, and then by the end of the book you're left dumbfounded and at the edge of your seat because of the fact that you were wrong the entire time. At least it was for me. The Natural series was the first YA mystery thriller that I honestly enjoyed from first book to the very last book. And then coming in at spot number 9, I don't once again think this is going to be a big surprise to many of you, but it is one of the only romances that I've ever enjoyed reading ever. I'm not a huge romance person. I don't enjoy romance, and that is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is the only romance book that I have ever fallen deeply in love with enough to follow it on Instagram, follow it on TikTok, watch the movie when it came out, as well as the fact that I'm very, very excited that there's going to be a second movie and potentially a sequel to the Red, White, and Royal Blue. There's just nothing that I can say about this book besides go read it. I think it's just one of those happy, feel-good books that I turn to when I'm just having a rough day. And that's why it's my all-time favorite. Then coming in at spot number 10 is one that really changed how I viewed literature, as well as like really diving deep into literature and comparing classic literature to what our modern day literature is today, and that is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This was one that I had hesitated reading, and I still kick myself in the butt for hesitating reading this. It is the only book to have ever made me cry. The one other thing that I really love about this is that Madeline Miller takes a really unique, at least one of the unique approaches to Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey. There's a lot of historians out there that kind of debate when it comes to Achilles and Patroclus. Many people obviously believe that they were really, really, really good friends, the best of friends, and you have some people like Madeline Miller who take the approach of they were obviously definitely more than friends. Weaves a wonderful tale, a beautiful story about love and betrayal. I definitely don't want to give anything away with this besides the fact that you should definitely go read it. And spot number 7 is a book that changed who I was as a literary student. It was a book that enraptured me throughout my years of university, and it's a book that I've written many, many papers on, and that is Baywolf. Now, Baywolf does not have an author, however, this specific edition is by Seamus Heaney, and the reason why I love this edition so much is that you have the very easy to understand English translation on this side of the page, and then on this side you have the Old English, Anglo-Saxon language on this side. And it's very interesting because of the fact that if you did study Anglo-Saxon English or Old English, you'll know that it is very complicated, but it's a beautiful language. And it's just, there's just so many things about this story, as well as the fact that Baywolf is considered one of the founding fathers for fantasy. So Baywolf was written in, I think, 500 or 600 BC, or was it 300, 400? Can't remember. And it follows the story of a Scandinavian hero who faces off against monsters, but also, it talks about heroism and, what makes a hero and what makes a villain, and it's just beautiful and epic. And Beowulf has also played a huge role in what we see in fantasy today, especially when you're thinking of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and Martin's Game of Thrones. There's actually big aspects of Beowulf that you will be able to find in both of those books. And then moving into spot number 6 is one that will always be memorable to me, and honestly it was very struggled put this at number 6 because it's the book that made me who I am as a reader, as well as the fact that it is the book that made me a reader. And no, it is not Twilight, it is not Divergent, and it is not The Hunger Games. No, it is Aragon by Christopher Paolini. If you haven't read Aragon, highly recommended. It is a beautiful story. I love this entire series. This is where dragons originated for me. It wasn't Fourth Wing, it wasn't Game of Thrones or anything like that. Dragons first became my obsession in Aragon, and it's still one of the best stories to this date. Then moving into spot number 5 is a book that changed who I was in the sense that I finally found myself, and I found myself in a book that I had never thought I would find myself in, and that was Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. If you're looking for a series, especially a graphic novel series, where you will find yourself, it doesn't matter who you are, I highly, highly recommend Heartstopper. I think so many people know about this series. I think many from TikTok to Instagram, YouTube, and obviously the Netflix TV show. But I just remember reading this for the first time, and I remember saying, this is me. This is who I am. And it was so beautiful to be seen, especially when it came to anxiety, depression, and eating disorders. I finally felt like I could connect to characters on a whole and true level, and that's just something that I'm always going to remember. Then moving into spot number 4, we have a book that actually kickstarted my love of adult fantasy, and one that I will always recommend, and one that I've probably recommended to many of you in the past, and that is the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. This is just a book that if you ever want to enter into adult fantasy, this is so accessible to everyone. This reads like a YA fantasy, but it is not. It is published as an adult fantasy, however, it does have a young adult main character, Vin. There are just so many things about this book, about Brandon Sanderson's writing in general, that I just absolutely love. It's those kind of like checks all the boxes for a 5-star read, and this definitely was a 5-star read for me. Then moving into spot number 3 is an adult fantasy that honestly just blew my mind, and that is Jay Kristoff's Empire of the Vampire. If you're wanting to throw it back to what vampires were before they were sparkling, fast, and you need to tear them apart and burn them to unalive them, or any of the silly things that vampires have become today, highly recommend Empire of the Vampire. It really brings you back to what Bram Stoker's Dracula was. Jay Kristoff weaves such a wonderful, beautiful tale because this follows our crusader, Gabriel, who is telling his story of how he's trying to defend his continent against vampires, and vampires ended up taking over this continent after a phenomenon happened where the sun kind of doesn't rise anymore. It's epic, it's beautiful, it's actually, weirdly enough, very easy to read and super accessible. It is dark, it is gritty, not everyone agrees with how he writes female characters, but his storytelling is beautiful, and it's just something that will always have a special place in my heart. And then getting down to the last 2, sitting at spot number 2 of my all-time favorite books, one that is another adult fantasy. It really pushed me in the sense of a challenge and challenging myself when it came to adult fantasy, and that is The Prior of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is 900 pages of gloriousness, and once again, there are dragons in here, and there's lore, and there's story, and the storytelling is so beautiful, and we follow 6 different characters, but you never feel like you're lost. And if you ever want to challenge yourself and you ever want to pick up a massive book, definitely Prior of the Orange Tree. It was something that I gave myself as a challenge last year, and it made me feel like I could accomplish anything. And then coming in at spot number 1 is a book that I don't think will ever leave spot number 1 because of the fact that it played a huge part in my childhood. It played a huge part growing up. There's just not much to say about it, but it's The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. I can't say anything that hasn't been said about this book besides the fact that it's amazing. And if you don't know what The Lord of the Rings are, I want to ask where you've been, because it's been around for a very long time. It has some of the best movies ever made. We are not counting the TV show because that TV show doesn't exist to me, but it has some of the best movies ever made. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, it is an iconic piece of literature. Tolkien has written a masterpiece that will live until the end of time. Alright guys, so there you have it. There are all of my top 10 favorite books of all time. I hope that you came away with this with a new recommendation or a book that you definitely would love to read, or maybe you've been hesitating to pick it up and now you want to pick it up. I'm hoping that you got some sense of that by the end of this video. Obviously, my top 10 tends to change. Not often, but it does change every few years, especially when I read a book that really leaves a mark on not only my reading life, but just my life in general. So, if you liked this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. In the comments below, leave a book that you always recommend to everyone, and also make sure to subscribe to my channel for new videos. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!